In The Decisive, Jason Statham is pulled back into a dangerous world of deceit and betrayal when his brother is kidnapped by a ruthless crime syndicate. Forced to choose between saving his family and stopping a global catastrophe, Jason races against time to uncover shocking truths, face heart-stopping confrontations, and make a decision that will define his future and the world's. Jason Statham had always been the type of man to seek solace in silence, away from the chaos that once consumed his life. A quiet life on the coast, repairing boats and watching the horizon was all he needed now. The world had its way of moving forward, but he had closed that chapter. His past, however, was never far behind. One quiet evening, as he worked on an old yacht, a sleek black car pulled up to his modest workshop. "Here comes an old shaggy," he said. A woman in a nice gray suit was watching his every move. He heard her call out and turned around. Sure enough, a younger woman, a stranger, stepped out, wearing a sharp suit that contrasted sharply with the rustic surroundings. He approached Jason with a cold, calculating gaze and handed him an envelope before turning and walking away without saying a word. Inside the envelope were pictures, graphic images of his younger brother Jack, bound and blooded. A simple, chilling message was scribbled on the back: "Complete the mission or your brother dies." The blood drained from Jason's face as he absorbed the implications of the message. His brother had been missing for years, and Jason had given up hope of ever finding him. From the time he was an infantryman, three-way, now someone knew where he was, and they were holding him hostage to force Jason back into the world of espionage he had tried so hard to escape. The man who had handed over the envelope was nowhere to be seen, but the message was clear. Jason had no choice but to return to the life he had left behind. The mission was simple, but the stakes were high. Jack's life depended on Jason stealing a microchip from a powerful global syndicate known as Black Horizon. The chip contained critical military data, and its owner, Victor Drazen, a ruthless billionaire, was planning to sell it to the highest bidder. Whoever controlled the chip would control a weapon capable of shifting the balance of power worldwide. Jason had always been a man of action, not words. He could see through the lies and deception of the world, but the idea that his brother could be used as a pawn in such a high-stakes game tore at him. Yet, there was no time for hesitation. The person who had sent the message had made it clear that Jack's survival depended on Jason's ability to retrieve the chip. With no other options, Jason reluctantly agreed. Determined to pull off the mission with precision, Jason reached out to two people he could trust: Mia, a brilliant hacker with a past of her own, and Kai, an ex-military strategist who was always one step ahead of the enemy. Together, they formed a plan to infiltrate Drazen's heavily fortified tech facility where the microchip was stored. Jason had no illusions about the difficulty of the task ahead. And Kai, Drazen's fortress was impenetrable, guarded by a small army of mercenaries and sophisticated surveillance systems. It would take everything they had and more to get inside undetected. The trio spent days meticulously preparing. Mia worked her magic, hacking into security systems and mapping out escape routes, while Kai ran simulations, studying every potential threat. Jason, the man of action, knew the real test would come when they put the plan into motion. It was a high-stakes game, and one mistake could cost them everything. As the night of the heist arrived, Jason's nerves were steady, but his mind was constantly turning over the question: what would happen once they got the chip? The night was dark and quiet as they made their way into Drazen's compound. The tension was palpable, but they moved with the precision of professionals. They avoided the guards and disabled the security cameras, taking advantage of every inch of darkness. As they reached the vault where the chip was stored, Jason's heart pounded in his chest. Mia accessed the system, overriding the final layer of security. Exit number 1. The heavy metal door slowly creaked open, revealing the microchip in a secure vault, surrounded by layers of protection. Jason didn't hesitate. With a swift motion, he grabbed the chip and tucked it into his jacket. But just as they thought they had succeeded, an unexpected twist emerged. A hidden message popped up on Mia's screen: "You're being used. Trust no one." Jason's eyes narrowed as he realized something was wrong. The mission wasn't just about retrieving the chip. It was about something much bigger, and someone was playing a dangerous game. But there was no time to process the warning. They needed to get out. In a tense, high-stakes escape, Jason and his team were forced to fight their way out of the compound. The alarms blared as they encountered wave after wave of mercenaries. Jason's combat skills, honed over years of experience, were put to the test as he fought off enemies in a series of explosive hand-to-hand battles. His team followed closely behind, but there was no denying that something felt off. They managed to escape, but their victory was short-lived. Once they were safely out of Dragon's compound, Jason found himself holding the chip in his hands, staring at the code that could change the course of history. But as he pondered his next move, he received a chilling message. Mia, the hacker he had trusted, had vanished. She had betrayed them, taking the chip with her. Jason felt the sting of betrayal deep in his gut. How could she have turned on them? The truth hit him hard. Mia hadn't just disappeared. She had double-crossed him, and now she was working for Victor Drazen. But why? What had forced her to turn against them? Jason had always known the world of espionage was full of betrayal, but this felt personal. He couldn't shake the feeling that someone was pulling the strings behind the scenes, manipulating everyone involved. But Jack's life was still at stake, and Jason couldn't afford to waste time on questions. Mia's disappearance set off a frantic chase across the city. Jason and Kai tracked her down, cornering her in an abandoned building. She was cold, calculating, and had no remorse for what she had done. But as Jason confronted her, she revealed a shocking truth. She hadn't betrayed them willingly. Mia had been blackmailed into helping Drazen and had no choice but to take the chip. Her life and the lives of her family had been threatened by Drazen's men, and she was forced to play her part. With the truth now revealed, Mia offered to help Jason bring Drazen down, but there was no time to waste. Drazen's plans were already in motion, and the stakes were higher than ever. The fate of the world rested in their hands. They formed an uneasy alliance, knowing they had no choice but to work together if they wanted to stop the impending disaster. Jason, Mia, and Kai tracked Drazen to a private island where he had set up a fortress, planning to sell the microchip to Black Horizon, a shadowy criminal organization with ties to the highest echelons of power. The island was surrounded by heavily armed mercenaries, and the trio knew their odds of success were slim. But Jason had faced impossible odds before, and he wasn't about to back down. The final confrontation was brutal. Jason and his team fought their way through the island's defenses, taking out mercenaries one by one. But when they finally confronted Drazen, they learned the shocking truth. Drazen was just a pawn. The true mastermind behind the operation was someone much closer to home. It was Jack's brother. Jack had staged his own kidnapping and was manipulating Jason into eliminating Drazen and Black Horizon's competition. Jason stood in shock, trying to process the truth. His brother, the one person he had been trying to save, had been the mastermind all along. Jack revealed that he had been working with Black Horizon from the start, using Jason to remove Drazen and secure the chip for his own purposes. The betrayal cut deep, and Jason felt the weight of it in every fiber of his being, but he couldn't let his emotions cloud his judgment. So, the mission had never been just about Jack. It had always been about something much bigger. Black Horizon's plans could not be allowed to succeed. In the final, heart-wrenching moments, Jason had to make a choice. He spared Jack's life, but he knew that his brother would face the consequences of his actions. Justice would come one way or another. As Jason walked away from the ruins of Black Horizon's operations, he realized that in the end, it wasn't the mission that defined him, it was the choices he had made, and he had chosen to fight for what was right. The story ended with Jason walking into the distance, a man who had once again faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. But the cost of victory had been steep, and the world would never be the same. And with a final glance over his shoulder, Jason knew that the fight wasn't over. It had only just begun.